Hi, everyone. My name is Rosalie Olmsted. I am WESIS Executive Assistant. It is an honor to have you all here today with WESIS strategic partner, Adobe. But before we get started and I pass it over to Melissa, I'd like to give you a quick overview of the WESIS organization. We often go by our acronym, WESIS, because that is exactly what we are, a global cyber sisterhood. WESIS is a 501c3 nonprofit organization with the mission to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. Our community is made up of over 10,000 members in over 103 countries. We have 70 professional affiliates and over 300 student chapters around the world. We offer a variety of initiatives and skills development programs, including our leadership series, the Job Board Plus Plus, the Speakers Bureau, our annual conference, which is happening in a couple months in Dallas, Texas, the Mentor-Mentee program, book club, and so much more. We owe all of our wonderful initiatives and programs to all of our strategic partners who fund us year-round. Our Tier 1 partners being 3M, Akamai, Amazon, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon University's Software Engineering Institute, Cisco, Ford, Google, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Optum, Sandia National Labs, and SentinelOne. Please do not forget to ask questions throughout the webinar today. Melissa will be answering the questions at the end during a Q&A portion. And if you have a question, please drop it in the question box below, and we will definitely get to them at the end when time permits during that Q&A portion. And lastly, if you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to the WESIS newsletter to stay up to date on upcoming events and programs. You can find it at wesis.org in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Melissa with Adobe.
Okay. Thank you, Rosalie. Oh, sorry. As Rosalie said, my name is Melissa Burns, and I am thrilled to be here today to share my career journey from working in the creative space and then transitioning into the exciting world of cybersecurity and tech. I am currently a principal security partner with Adobe, where I've been lucky enough to explore a variety of different roles within the security org since joining the company in 2019. I live in Arlington, Virginia with my wonderful husband and our lovely cat, Lola. And in today's webinar, I am going to really take you through an unscripted journey into tech and cybersecurity. And sorry, it was my unscripted journey. And this isn't a typical story. It's one of discovering new passions, embracing challenges, and really finding meaningful connections. So here's the roadmap that we'll talk about in this next hour. So I'm first going to start kind of where I began after my undergraduate degree, working in the creative space. Then we'll jump into my volunteering experience and me joining the Peace Corps and kind of my motivation for doing that. And then while I was in my Peace Corps service, where I discovered the passion for cybersecurity and tech, and then while in the service, I grew that passion. And then after my service, when I returned home to the US, here I'll talk about kind of the experience that I sought after, furthering my education and really building my network. And then we'll kind of go full circle where I returned to Adobe, and not as an Adobe customer, but as an Adobe employee. And then I'll kind of close my journey with some lessons learned along my way. And then for those of you who are joining, who are trying to break into the world of cybersecurity, I'll share some advice and some resources that I have found helpful along my journey. And then we'll close with some final reflections. And then if there's some time afterwards, then we'll go ahead and open it up for some Q&A. So let's go ahead and dive in. And I apologize, I'm getting over a cold, so I have some water here, but hopefully I'll make it through the whole hour. So my early career began in media production, where I quickly learned the importance of building a strong network when I was a student at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. And it was through that network that I managed to land my first unpaid internship as a production assistant for a local production company in Las Vegas. And now, after a lot of hard work, I finally graduated with a degree in journalism, and my internship ended up turning into a full-time position as a videographer and a video editor. Now, at the time, I really thought that I had found my dream job. I was working in an industry that I had studied in school. I was having fun balancing the time between shooting video, across the Vegas Strip, and then editing video in my edit bay. And I was also getting an opportunity to use Adobe, the fun Adobe software like Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects, and Premiere. And this was on a daily basis. And I was really turning into a true media professional. But, while I enjoyed the work that I did, it was creative. I got to meet a lot of people and see a lot of things. Over the course of my tenure at the company, I started to feel stuck. And my role was not evolving where I thought it would evolve. And conversations with my manager confirmed that there wasn't much room for growth in my current role. And that's when I realized that the physical demands of the job weren't sustainable long-term, in my opinion. As you can see in one of the photos there, I'm carrying a camera. It was a heavy camera, and I did this all the time. And over time, I was really hard for me imagining seeing myself do this kind of work, 20 years from now. And so around this time, I started to look for other opportunities outside of media where I could still be creative, but I could use my journalism degree. And then I started thinking about an opportunity that I had been introduced to when I was a student, and that was the US Peace Corps. So before I jump into my volunteering and how I got motivated, I figured it'd be important to kind of share with the audience like what the Peace Corps is without going too far off topic. So the US Peace Corps is a government program that sends US-based volunteers abroad to work on community-driven projects like areas in education, IT, health, agriculture, youth development, business, a whole slew of different areas. But at its core, it's really about fostering cultural exchange and building a global understanding of not only the US, but also the countries that we serve in. And also at the same time, empowering local communities to really create sustainable progress. And for most volunteers like myself, you see the tagline on the screen, it's the toughest job that you'll ever love. And it continues to be the toughest job that I'll ever love. And that's with the Peace Corps. So you might ask, what was my motivation for joining the Peace Corps and how does this come into play with IT? Well, I first heard about the Peace Corps in my undergraduate studies at UNLV. I was taking a multicultural communication course to fulfill one of my cultural language requirements. And one day there was two speakers that came in to talk about their Peace Corps experience. They were returned Peace Corps volunteers who had served in, I believe, Central America. And they were then graduate students at UNLV. And in that time, after hearing them talk about the work that they had done in the Peace Corps, the projects that they were involved in, and the community development activities that they participated in, I was instantly hooked. And from that moment, I knew that I wanted to someday join the Peace Corps. Now, at first, I had no clear idea what I wanted to do in the Peace Corps. I had a journalism degree, and I did not think that that was a transferable skill. But I still thought I needed to be part of that organization. So, however, the application requirement required me to write a motivational statement. And that was a problem because I did not feel confident in my writing. And that uncertainty really caused a long delay in submitting my application. And when I say long delay, I meant many years. So while I worked at the production studio, I wrestled with writing that motivational statement, went back and forth to the website many times, but never did it. And so it was then that I decided to look for alternative ways to volunteer. And when I started looking for volunteer opportunities, I started looking at tech roles. It wasn't intentional at first, but these roles seemed to really be the ones that I was most interested in. And that was kind of the leap into working in the tech world. I first started helping my local library manage its online book sales of donated books. And then later, I started teaching at a local senior citizen center, teaching basic computer skills and how to use the internet. And these experiences not only gave me a stronger sense of purpose, but it really helped me shape my confidence and my perspective, making writing that motivational statement for the Peace Corps feel a little more attainable. So after a few years of self-reflection, volunteering, skill building, and working through my writing challenges, I finally took the leap and I applied. And after many rounds of interviews and a year later, I was finally offered a volunteer position as an IT education volunteer on the small island nation of Vanuatu. And me, along with 38 fellow volunteers, headed down to the South Pacific for 2 years of service. I was super excited, but I would be lying if I said that I was not scared. I was terrified. The unknown, combined with a feeling of being unqualified for the role, led to serious imposter syndrome. But I wasn't going to quit. I had just quit my job, so I knew that I needed to push past this fear. Now, when I first landed in Vanuatu, I was assigned to a high school called St. Patrick's College on the island of Ambai in Vanuatu. And here I was going to be working with a local counterpart teaching IT and computer skills. Now, the first 6 weeks of my service were spent getting the school's computer lab ready for the new year. And this was done all on my own. Now, it took a lot of resilience and perseverance because I knew that I needed to push through these challenges. Now, I was a heavy Mac user in my previous role at the production studio, and now I was working with Windows system. And adding to that challenge, we only had electricity at my school for about 2.5 hours every day, and we had no internet. So each morning, I had to walk about an hour to the local village that had the hospital, that had working internet. And I would sit there and I'd work through a whole slew of notes that I had taken the night before. These notes would include trying to decipher the Windows beep codes that you hear when the system first boots up, trying to understand what the blue screen errors, also known as the blue screen of death errors that you see. I'm trying to understand the malware scan results that I had done the night before, and then also downloading drivers and updates for the computers. Now, once the hospital shut down, the internet was off, I'd walk back to my school, and then until the power came back on in the school, I'd start to work through my notes. I'd start taking apart some of the broken computers, really salvaging whatever I could, and then inventorying the parts that I thought might still work. And when the evening power came on at the school, I'd go through the notes that I had taken earlier that day and then just hope that something I tried worked. So my days became a nonstop cycle of troubleshooting. But buying new equipment on this island was not an option. So I really had to adapt, and I had to learn to fix as much as I could with what I had. And I had to teach myself how to do this. And by the start of the school year, my counterpart returned. I had managed to transform my lab from 9 working computers to 22 working systems. And so what this meant was when school started, I would have 20 to 21 students in my classroom. Each one of them had their own computer, and they didn't have to share. So it was a big win for both me and for my school. So halfway through my first year in Vanuatu, I really discovered that I had a knack for fixing things. And word spread quickly around the island that I could pretty much solve any software issue or tackle, minor hardware problems to an extent. And people would show up at my door with a broken laptop or a desktop computer. And, I would assess the situation. And oftentimes you would hear me saying, yes, mi sabe blong fixum computer blong you, which translates to, yes, I can fix your computer. But Despite this growing reputation, I really still felt that I had constant anxiety about the computers in my lab breaking down, but this was not unwarranted. I faced every single technical challenge imaginable during my service. So at the school, I either had to wait for the school to buy petrol for the generator that powered the school, or the school to fix the generator when it was broke. And then I was constantly repairing computers. And so my days just felt like an endless loop of fixing things. And on top of that, we had no internet access, as I mentioned before. And I was regularly having to remove malware issues from both my lab for my students as well as my teachers' computers. And I still had to teach my students and train teachers. So I practically had two jobs at this time, teacher and IT fixer. But I would say that the root cause of this malware issue was influenced by local practices. The people of Vanuatu loved sharing music, videos, movies with their friends, their family, their colleagues. And malware spread extremely quickly between devices through infected files, their networks, malicious downloads, but specifically flash drives was my culprit. And to tackle this, I needed to teach myself a way to keep people from using dirty flash drives on our school computers. So I went back to the hospital, was doing some research, and I learned that I could implement really simple security and technical controls in my two labs. And so I ended up installing antivirus and anti-malware on all my computers. I disabled the auto run and autoplay to keep flash drives from doing their thing. And I even started blocking USB ports in my student lab. And of course, this worked for a time, but no security measure is foolproof, and students and teachers always found creative ways to work around them. But I became highly skilled at removing malware from the computers using my friendly island response plan. And at the time, I didn't know that a response plan was an actual industry term or a thing that they used. And my process was very similar to the industry process. I would identify an issue in a computer, usually through a scan or just manual inspection. I would contain the threat, and this was often done by me, booting the computer in Linux, backing up the files, getting rid of the threat, eradicating it, and then I would recover the system. And typically, recovery on the island meant I had to reinstall the operating system, either using operating system disk or restoring from a backup. But despite the growing challenges that I faced on the island, of trying to teach technology on an island, I really began to feel more confident in my ability to fix endpoint devices. And to my surprise, it was something that I actually enjoyed it. I really got the thrill of opening up a computer if it was a hardware issue and kind of looking inside and seeing what was wrong. Booting in Linux and just playing around there and just really, trying to learn how to understand scan results. And it was just something that I really, really enjoyed. And I then started adding security-focused training sessions to my general IT curriculum and began hosting one-on-one sessions to teach local teachers about computer safety and how to protect themselves against malware. And by the end of my second year, I felt that I still had more to give, I had more to learn, and even more importantly, I was not ready to go home. So I ended up extending my service for a third year, and I continued to improve my school's IT and computer studies curriculum, and really at that time prepared my counterpart to take over teaching the classes and fixing computers after I left. And more importantly, I also worked with my counterpart and my school to get a Peace Corps partnership program that eventually funded the lab to buy 7 new computers to replace a lot of the older computers that I knew wouldn't last after I left. And it was during this third year of mine that I started to think about life after the Peace Corps. And with the Peace Corps, as a return volunteer, you get benefits like non-competitive eligibility for federal jobs and also graduate student or graduate school scholarships. And so I started exploring opportunities in tech as well as in education. And when my service ended, I returned back to the US, bringing with me valuable work experience, lifelong lessons, and a newfound for both IT and cybersecurity. So now I make it back home, back to Las Vegas. I'm living with my parents yet again. And one of my main goals was just to find a job. And I wanted to find a job fast. So I applied to every entry-level IT job that I could find, but I heard back from nobody. And I started to feel frustrated. And I know a lot of you on this call who have applied for jobs and never heard back have probably felt frustrated too. But I ended up turning to Facebook, believe it or not. And I posted that I was looking for an IT job, an entry IT job. I was willing to kind of do anything, talked about my experience, what I had done in the Peace Corps, what I had taught myself, what I was looking for. And that post just kind of sat there. I got plenty of reactions and encouragement, but then one day a message popped up in my inbox, and an old friend of mine reached out with a job lead. Now, funny enough, we used to play in a bagpipe band together in Las Vegas, and yes, I still do play the bagpipes. And it turns out that one of our former band managers worked for Taco Bell. And they were looking for an IT specialist to join their IT team. And so one meeting and 2 tacos later, I had my first IT job working for Taco Bell. Now, in this job, I knew that it was just a stepping stone. It gave me some actual real world IT experience working for Taco Bell. But I was also able to kind of figure out what my next move was going to look like. I loved the work that I did for Taco Bell. It was a small team, and we got to do everything, working in the restaurants and fixing things. But my time in the Peace Corps had really sparked that passion for cybersecurity and living abroad. And so that's when I started to look for jobs in the public sector. And I came across a job at the Department of State called an information management specialist. Now, this job sounded awesome. This particular position would place you in an embassy overseas, working in IT, working with the locals. And I thought that this was a perfect fit for me. But there was one problem. I did not meet the education or experience requirements for this role. So I had 2 options. I could either go back and get my bachelor's degree and keep working at Taco Bell for another 3 or 4 years to get the required experience, or I could do my master's degree. Now, I was 30, maybe 30 plus at this time, and I was really trying to look for the shortest path possible. And so I opted for the master's degree. And so I started exploring programs. And as I mentioned previously, that as a return Peace Corps volunteer, it gives you certain benefits. And so I did qualify for certain graduate school scholarship programs. I applied for a few schools, and I was ultimately accepted into Carnegie Mellon University's Global Information Systems Management program. But I was also able to specialize in information security. And that was the big thing for me. And the other bonus for this program, that was the global component. And this allowed me to study my first year in Adelaide, Australia, and then spend my second year in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, with some support from my Taco Bell manager and my friends, I had to take some prep courses in Java to get that, the underlying foundation, and a class in statistics. But after that, I was ready to begin. Now, I'll say my master's program at CMU was extremely challenging. I did not have that undergrad engineering degree like a lot of my fellow classmates did. but I somehow managed to make it through. But it was the internships that I sought out during my studies that had the biggest impact on my career. So first, when I was in Australia, I got an internship as a cybersecurity intern for the South Australian government. And my project for this group was to create a new cybersecurity training program. And then I also was able to assist in their inside cyber operations center. Now, not only did this internship give me, again, hands-on experience in the field of cybersecurity, but I actually had cybersecurity in my job title. And I was like, yes, I can put this on my resume. And then when I moved to Pittsburgh to finish my second year, I ended up joining Carnegie Mellon's CERT, which is the division of the Software Engineering Institute, as a cybersecurity intern as well. And there, during my studies, I was able to work part-time on federal IT and security projects. And these two experiences were game changers. You know, they really boosted my confidence. I was working with other actual cybersecurity professionals. And the internships really boosted my confidence and equipped me with the skills that I needed to keep pushing towards a full-time role in cybersecurity. And after I graduated, I was hired as a full-time cybersecurity engineer with CERT. But at that time, I really believed that I was well on my way to becoming a strong candidate for that Department of State job. But there was one minor problem. If those of you on the call are familiar with the Department of State, I had to wait for the position to open. It was not a rolling application. So I continued to work at CERT, and I waited and I waited. So sometimes the biggest opportunities come when you least expect them. You know, like I said, I was still working at CERT, and I was waiting probably a little too patiently for the Department of State to open that application for my second dream job. But then out of nowhere, my team's admin told me that I'd been selected to attend the WSIS, the Women in Cybersecurity Conference hosted by Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. Now, I had never heard of WSIS before, but I was excited to check out the conference, listen to the talks and really connect with others like me working in the industry. And it was at WSIS that I ran into a former classmate of mine from CMU, and she was working at Adobe. Now, I wasn't actively job hunting at the time. Like I said, I was patiently waiting for my dream job to open. But then the more I thought about it, I started to think what if, right? And a few months later, that same friend of mine that I reconnected with at the WSIS conference posted about a job opening on her team. Well, I reached out for a referral. I just said, what the heck, let me give it a try. And things moved extremely fast. Within weeks of getting that referral, I had an interview with the recruiting manager, then with the hiring manager, and then I was flown to Seattle for my on-site interview, and then I got an offer within roughly 2 weeks. And ironically, the same day after I accepted my offer with Adobe, the Department of State finally opened up that application process for the information management specialist role. But then I knew that I had made the right choice with going with Adobe. And so I packed up my apartment, left Pittsburgh, and I headed to Seattle to start my next journey with Adobe. So now coming full circle, walking into Adobe on my first day felt surreal. I was still kind of like, I cannot believe I'm here. You know, I'd gone from being a long-term Adobe customer to really supporting the teams behind the products that I love to use. Now, my first role was on the sales security engagement team as an information security analyst. And on this team, I kind of acted as a liaison or a bridge between the Adobe security team, the broader security team, and our Adobe sales team and our customers. And in this role, I really needed to become an expert, not only in the Creative Cloud applications like Photoshop and Illustrator, which I knew pretty well, but I also needed to ramp up on product security, and I needed to do that fast. There was a learning curve, I'll admit, but I was really excited for the work. And after a few years, I ended up being promoted to the manager for the same team. And this opportunity kind of gave me a way to improve, look at the team and look at how we were working and really improve our processes, scale our operations, and really enhance our customer engagement model. And while I learned a lot about working with people and people management, I really quickly realized that management was not my long-term path. And so I ended up making a lateral move about a year later onto the risk management team as a cloud security engineer. But shortly after me joining the team, probably 5 months or so, the team was restructured, and I was then asked to lead a new team and build a new strategic remediation program. And I wasn't going to say no to this opportunity, even though I had switched from being a manager and now was a manager again. Saying yes to this team wound up being a part of Adobe's larger vulnerability management team and gave me an opportunity to just try something different. So starting this team from the ground up has probably been one of my most rewarding experiences at Adobe. My team and I started kind of our work by defining what our new mission was going to look like. And we needed to identify the problem areas that we wanted to focus on. And we ended up designing a program to address reoccurring security issues at their root cause. And this was challenging technical work that required research and constant collaboration across various security teams as well as product teams. And one thing about this role was I really enjoyed seeing the progress that my small team made, the impacts that we made, and really, just seeing my team grow from, being risk managers and now being on this new team and kind of getting their hands wet in something different. It was really valuable. But again, being a manager was not the direction that I wanted to go. And so probably almost 2 years or a year and a half after leading this team, I decided to jump into my current role as the principal security partner and cloud lead for Creative Cloud and digital media platform. Now, in this role, I get to work closely with product leaders and make sure that our security initiatives stay a priority while aligning with business goals of our products. I get to help translate complex security needs into clear, actionable priorities for leadership, and I get to foster collaboration across our teams. And then I also have a group of security partners that help support the products that flow up into my cloud. And so that's also a fun thing. I get to work with the team. And it's a very dynamic role that keeps me constantly moving. I get to balance communication, technical expertise, and all the while still building a deep understanding of both security and Adobe business. So the one takeaway from my Adobe experience is, it's amazing how one unexpected conference like the WSIS really set this all in motion. And coming full circle from using the Adobe products to now being in a position where I get to help protect those same products has been an exciting journey. And it's taught me that the power of saying yes to new opportunities and trusting myself to build something meaningful from the ground up is irreplaceable. So some of the lessons that I've learned along the way really have shaped the way that I approach opportunities and challenges. And I'm hoping that some of these kind of resonate with you. So first, the power of networking has been a constant theme through my cybersecurity journey. From landing my first IT job through a Facebook post to reconnecting with a former classmate at a conference, many pivotal moments in my career have come from relationships and being willing to ask for help when I needed it. And networking, it isn't just about meeting people. It's really about being open and sharing your goals with others. So you never know who's going to hold that key to your next opportunity. And then second, I've learned to really embrace unexpected opportunities. Now, if somebody had told me years ago that a chance invite to a conference or a casual conversation could completely change my career, I would not have believed them. But saying yes to those moments, even when I was looking for a change, opened doors that I didn't know existed. And then another one is lifelong learning is key. Whether it was for me going back to school for my master's or really diving headfirst into product security at Adobe, like every step has required me to learn something new. And the willingness to keep learning really has been critical in navigating each stage of my career. I've also learned that adaptability is essential. There are times when my career plans did not pan out the way that I thought they would. And whether it was endlessly waiting for that Department of State to open up a job or shifting into a completely different role at Adobe, being willing to pivot and explore new paths has been a recurring theme. And it's taught me that change often leads to growth. And then leadership is about building. You know, one of my favorite lessons came from building the strategic remediation team. You know, whether you're a manager or you're creating a new program, it's all about finding ways to make things scalable, impactful, and better than they were before. And just as important as leadership, it's also important to know when you need to reassess your goals. You know, I've learned to recognize that when a role no longer aligns with my strengths or my passions, it's time to make a change. It's not always easy. Change is hard. Change is scary, but it's necessary to keep moving towards working towards something that really fulfills you. And then finally, you know, I've always found ways to blend creativity with security. You know, my background in media will never go away, but that's helped me bring a unique perspective to cybersecurity. And that's something that I've also been able to carry throughout every role. The work that we do isn't just technical. It's about problem solving, storytelling, and really finding creative solutions to everyday problems. So these lessons have really shaped my journey. And as I mentioned before, I really hope that they resonate with you and maybe even help you think about your own path in a new way. So now we're going to jump from my career journey into some advice for aspiring cybersecurity professionals. So breaking into the cybersecurity world might seem extremely daunting at first, but with the right approach, it's absolutely achievable. If I can do it, you can do it. So let's break it down to some practical steps or actionable steps. So first, I think the most important thing to do is when you're first starting to look into the field is research and understand the different roles within cybersecurity. There are a lot of them. And doing this research will help you align what you're most interested in with the cybersecurity jobs and help align that with your skills, your current skills, your interests, and ultimately your career goals. And then you need to focus on building a strong foundation. Dive into networking, look at operating systems, and understand the cyber threats that can impact both of those. You know, there's a lot of free programs or platforms like Cyberary and YouTube that offer great videos and tutorials that can help you build that foundation. You know, and also practice is key. Get hands-on experience through the cybersecurity challenges like Capture the Flag events or beginner-friendly hackathons. Participating in these types of events can really give you, can build your skills. You can leverage your skills. And then at the same time, they can even work towards entry-level work experience. And then next, learn to network and learn to showcase your skills with your networks. The cybersecurity community is a vibrant and supportive community. So join groups like this group, WSIS, or OWASP for mentorship networking, and job opportunities. And then you can stand out to your networks by building a strong portfolio. Your portfolio could be projects that you've worked on, when you were a student. You can write blogs about security topics that you're interested in, or share insights from a lab that you completed. This not only demonstrates that you have the skills to do the work, but then it also shows to your network that you're committed. And then make sure that you apply for roles, even if you don't tick every single box. Don't let a job description discourage you. Many women hesitate to apply for a job unless they meet all the requirements or the qualifications. And I'm guilty of this as well. But make sure that you focus on your transferable skills and practical experiences. And most importantly, trust in your ability to learn and show that you can grow on the job. And then one area is leveraging your non-technical backgrounds. If you're coming from a different field and trying to break in cybersecurity, but you have education in something else, we all have built soft skills in those roles. So, emphasize those skills. Strong communication, problem solving, and critical thinking are essential in cybersecurity. And these skills are oftentimes not developed they're often developed in non-technical roles. And they can be a huge asset to any team. And then you want to make sure that you try to map your experience with your existing skills. So for example, if you have a legal background, look at roles like compliance analyst or risk manager. If you come from education or a training background, there's positions in cybersecurity awareness training that might suit you. And then most importantly is customer service experience. As a customer service person, you are able to communicate and explain things to people in a way that makes it easy to understand. And we need people like that in security and IT support, as well as incident response roles. And then make sure that you position yourself as a unique candidate. Highlight how your diverse background provides a fresh perspective on problem solving, strategy, or managing risk in cybersecurity. When I first applied for the job at Adobe, I actually used the fact that I had been a user of the same Creative Cloud applications for almost 10 years, and I knew them. And I think that because I had an understanding of the products as a customer, as a user, that helped, kind of bolster my qualifications and really led to me getting hired in that first role at Adobe. And then upskill in your key technical areas. So it's important not only to build your existing strengths, but you can also sharpen key technical skills. One skill that I constantly see in open roles is Python scripting. So focus on learning how to script in Python, or get hands-on practice with open source security tools. There's a lot of them out there. Or pick up just in general basic coding skills. This can go a long way. It can go a long way in showing that you're proactive, that you're adaptable, and you're ready to tackle real-world challenges. And these skills not only make you more versatile, but they also help you stand out in the field. And then looking at some resources that have helped me along my career are first certifications. So I do feel that certifications can be important for certain positions and certain roles. And for beginners, I do recommend that people look at the CompTIA Security Plus cert. And this is going to help you build a solid foundation in cybersecurity concepts. And then there's a lot of hands-on labs online. So for beginners, I recommend taking a look at Try Hack Me. And then if you're more advanced and looking for some hacking challenges, then you can look at Hack the Box. And there are free learning platforms. I already talked about Cyberary and YouTube as good resources, but also LinkedIn Learning. I think a lot of people don't realize that if you have a local library card or you're a student at a university, that you might have free access to the LinkedIn Learning platform. And there's all different types of training, not only in tech and security, but just in any kind of topic that you're looking for. And then lastly, mentorships and scholarships. Take advantage of these. You know, the Women in Cybersecurity, the WSIS group, really have good mentorship and scholarship opportunities, as Rosalie mentioned when we first started the webinar. So take a look at the website and see how you can get help and get involved. Then the SAN Cyber Academy offers a 100% scholarship, which is eligibility based. It's a program for students or career changers like myself who are looking to enter the cybersecurity industry. It's a fast-paced course, but it's a really good program to kind of get you that entry-level position. And then the cyber course, which is a scholarship for service program. And this is designed for undergraduate or graduate students who are looking to work in both cybersecurity and the public sector. And then we're just going to close here with some final reflections. So I first want to say that no two journeys into cybersecurity are the same. And that's really what makes this field so exciting. I think over the course of me working at Adobe, as well as, at CERT and even in Australia, I have come across people who did not start in cybersecurity. They actually had a different degree, whether it was economics or business or even English. They somehow mapped their journey into cybersecurity. So it can be very unique. So embrace it. And just understand that your background can be a perspective that can be extremely valuable. And then make sure that you stay curious and keep learning. One thing about cybersecurity is that it's always evolving. It never stays the same. And you don't need to know everything right away. So what matters is that you have a willingness to explore, to experiment, and to adapt. And then next we have imposter syndrome. This is real, but don't let it hold you back. You belong here. You belong in this industry. Your skills, your ideas, and your insights bring something new to the table. So trust yourself and keep pushing forward. And then very important is to build your network. Make sure that you're connecting with people who support and inspire you. And groups like WSIS, OWASP, and local cybersecurity meetups in your community can really open the doors, introduce you to mentors, and really help you grow towards your path into cybersecurity. And then finally, advocate for representation. And this is probably the most important. Cybersecurity needs diverse voices and perspectives to thrive. By showing up, speaking out, and really supporting others, you're helping to shape a stronger, more inclusive industry. So whether your journey is straightforward or unscripted like mine, you make sure that you own it, keep learning, and don't be afraid of the unknown. So with that, I thank you very much. And looks like we have about 12 minutes for Q&A if there's any. Rosalie? Oh, I think you're on mute.
I am. Thank you. And it's been fun. I've been reading the questions as they've come in.
Oh boy.
Just for everyone, because I saw one with LinkedIn, and that was the last link I needed to display. So, and if anyone wants any of the links that Melissa has shared throughout her presentation, please, I will gladly attach these as an attachment after. So just come back into the webinar, you'll see them in the attachment section. But I am going to display her LinkedIn profile, so you're able to go ahead and grab that, because I did see that and I wanted to make sure I didn't miss that connection. But I'm going to just start. You've had a few just people saying, thank you for sharing. So I wanted to reiterate that. Thank you, Melissa. This has been a wonderful, it's always a joy to hear the different ways you can get into cybersecurity, because you mentioned it, it's an overwhelming when there's so many options. And so it's nice to hear someone who, if any of our viewers align with your background or with any part of your journey, saying like, I can follow that as well. So it's always exciting to hear the different ways to get in. And I appreciate you sharing, because I think I enjoyed learning more about the Peace Corps as well. And I didn't realize that was a such a key part in getting into cybersecurity. So thank you for sharing. But we have a question, and what beginner certification is recommended for beginners, CISSP, or Security Plus? Since everyone is implementing AI models, quantum, and cloud computing, AWS and Google also offer certifications. I'm confused on what to get first. Really appreciate, and then they just ended with saying thank you for helping us. So
yeah, so the CISSP requires, I think, about 5 years of industry experience in security. So I would definitely start with the Security Plus certification. That's you're going to get a full foundation. It's a mile wide. You're not going to go super deep in each area of security, but you're going to build that foundation. And that's really where I recommend people start. And you don't necessarily need to take the certification, but just study the course content and just become familiar with it. And then once you get your first job or your first entry level job, then start building those years of experience, and then you can tackle the CISSP.
So
yeah.
Another was loved hearing about the volunteer experience that you have, and they were curious, how do you recommend going about finding different volunteer opportunities within their community?
So there's a lot of like online sources. How I came across it was I just looked up like local volunteer opportunities in my area. So I just Googled that. And I remember I saw like the local library system popped up. And then there was just a website that you could search by state, by city, by what kind of area you wanted to volunteer in. And those are the two probably things that I use the most. As I mentioned, I volunteered at my library within the library system in Las Vegas. And so basically I just popped on there. I looked to see what kind of opportunities were available. And the first one was that online book sales. And so I just applied for that and got that job. And then, I wanted something more because it was only like a couple hours a weekend.
Yeah.
And so then I looked again and found like the IT, like it was working in the library at the Senior Citizen Center. And it was just working with seniors at the lab, the computer lab. And I was like, that's awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah. So check your library to see if they have opportunities, because there's always libraries are oftentimes teaching classes to people in the community about how to use computers. And there's also security classes sometimes offered. So if you can kind of get in there and kind of be like an assistant with a teacher that's like a full-time teacher, that's also a way to get experience.
Awesome. And somebody was super encouraged to hear about your upward movement in, your journey, especially at Adobe. And they were curious, what is your time gap between promotions, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, goodness. So I'm probably not going to get it accurate. So I've been with Adobe a little over 5 years.
Okay.
And so you saw that there's a lot of jobs. So I started as a security information analyst. I did get a minor promotion there into senior. And I think I was in that role for a year and a half. Then I got the manager position. But I think I was on that team. My goal, and I didn't mention this in the presentation, was to be on that team for 2 to 3 years to really, again, build my foundation of Adobe Security, and then venture off into something else. And so I was the manager for that team for roughly a year, maybe 11 months. And then that's when I made a transition into the cybersecurity or the cloud security engineer role on the risk team. And I was only there for 5 months because that team ended up dissolving. We restructured the small org. And that's when I moved into strategic remediation under the vulnerability management team. And I was there almost 2 years. I don't know if the math is working out here. But that was a manager position. I did what I needed to do. I got it established. And then I was like, okay, I need to get into something more hands-on, more technical. So I've been in the role I'm in now as principal security partner for almost a year. I think the end of April, March will be my year in this current role.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. we have an individual that is very curious for people over the age of 50, and they're wanting to break into like the non-technical side of cyber, like GRC. They have a master's, and from a while ago, and it's non-technical, and they don't really want to return back to school, and they're finding it very difficult, even with transferable skills, to make that transition. In like the front with the summary of their resume. Do you have any advice for someone in this position? They feel like there's still like an age bias out there, and especially for someone who identifies as female.
It's hard. I'm just gonna say it's hard. I wasn't 50, but when I finished graduate school, I was in my 30s. Most of my classmates were in their early 20s, and so it was challenging for me because I was just starting out and I was much older, and I know that add a few years on and you're in your 50s, it can be even more challenging because there's a lot of competition out there. My advice is, look for networks out there, ways that you can join, organize like meetups that might kind of gear you towards like GRC work. Look at certifications that you can build. I think certifications kind of help you, again, build that foundation and then show to potential employers that you're willing to kind of learn. But it's all about being creative and, just really mapping. And this can take some work, really mapping those skills that you've had in your previous career, finding creative ways to link that back up. And thankfully, with fun tools like ChatGPT that can help us do that. But I hope that helps. I know it's hard. I really do. I really do.
It's hard out there. So yeah, and it's a great question. Great question. Yeah. This one I think is I really enjoy this one. While networking during your transition, did you ever create a 10-second elevator speech, to pitch yourself? And they've been told to create one and to craft one to start off by defining the job title I'm seeking. But how do you balance creating one while being open to unexpected opportunities? Because I do think, and you hit on this, it is hard. Typically for females, I'm making a bit of a overview to sell ourselves. I feel like we undersell what we bring and what we offer. And so I do think creating an elevator pitch that is highlighting those skills is important. But any advice you have? Did you do one of these? Do you feel like you have your elevator pitch on how to sell yourself down?
Well, I don't have an elevator pitch right now, only because I'm in the role that I'm in. But I will say that when I first applied for the Peace Corps, I mentioned that there was like many interviews, and I remember one of the first ones was like, tell us why you should be a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer. Like, why should we accept you?
Yeah.
And so I know that I had kind of like a script on what made me stand out. I think I used the fact that, again, in the Peace Corps, similar to grad school, I was not the typical age, a little bit older. And so I kind of used that. I had job experience, why it was not in the IT field or anything remotely related to what the Peace Corps does. I was still able to transfer that into how I would be a successful volunteer, and then talked about my volunteer experience. And so I did kind of mold or craft an elevator pitch there. I do remember crafting something when I got the job working for Taco Bell, because I met with the manager for Taco Bell, and I never worked formally in an IT job. And so I needed to say, hey, this is me. I just finished the Peace Corps, 3 years. I did this, and this. I accomplished X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And now my goals, my career goals are X, Y, and Z. And I just was very transparent and very open in telling him what I was looking for. And yeah, I think an elevator pitch is important, but it's also good to have one that's kind of just like open, that talks about what who you are, what you're interested in doing, and kind of what your maybe a goal might be, whether or not it's a specific role or not. Especially for those challenges that or not challenges, opportunities that are unexpected, right? You can't always use the same elevator pitch for everything. So it's good just to have one that's kind of open, generic, I guess.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to get to the rest of the questions. So I know we are at time. This has been an absolutely spectacular webinar. I do encourage everyone, if you feel like your question wasn't answered, please, please, please reach out to Melissa on LinkedIn. Her link is in the announcements.
Yes.
If you need it, she'd happy to connect and continue that conversation. I want to just take that time to say, Melissa, thank you. This has been so encouraging and insightful on the different pathways in, and to just hear more about your journey. Thank you for taking the time to share it with all the viewers. I know we've all been, I've been super engaged, and I've learned so much about just you and the different options, and encouraging to hear that those exist and we are able to come into a journey in an industry when it's not where we started or went to, knew that we wanted to do when we were going into college. So thank you for taking that time with us and our viewers. I hope all of you have a great rest of your day wherever you joined us from. And again, Melissa, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.